Hey, fam.
Yo, yo, what is up, family?
What's going on? So, we are here today for Sloppy Media 2.0. Finish our discussion that we started last week.
Media
Going to talk
slop.
about the state of Black, our ADOS media, mass media. Where are we at on that?
So we have a special guest panelist. Usually she's in the background doing her thing, but today she's in the foreground from SoCal. Let's give it up for a digital hand clap for CO. What's up, CO?
Hey, what's good, fam? How y'all doing today?
All
Doing
right.
all right, doing all right. We out here in Sacramento. We were just talking before we went live. Our stay-at-home order has been lifted. So, how you feel about that? You Moya, you ready to go make up for last time? Get out in these Sacramento streets?
Hey, I'm ready to go. Anytime they say it's ready to go, I'm ready. Let's get out. What about you, Ken? You ready to go out there? Party
I
like it's
think I'm going
1999?
to continue to hunker down, and try to stay COVID free. COVID's still out there. And CO, you're out there in SoCal. What's the state of the COVID lockdown situation there?
It is everyone remains in lockdown. Let's say that the to my knowledge, the curfew is still in place. So the curfew is from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. unless you have you're going to work or it's an emergency or something like that. You're supposed to be in your house or at home or somewhere safe, quote unquote. But the cases in LA are increasing exponentially. The last I checked, it was like 1 in 5 people have contracted COVID. So it's getting worse and worse and worse. So my my little booty staying in the house. I don't care. They could lift it tomorrow. Like I'm good.
Yeah, and I heard something about when you travel to SoCal that I don't know. You have to quarantine as soon as you get there, or what are they doing? Checkpoints at the entry
No,
point.
what they're doing is sort of like what a lot of the flights are doing, their airplane agencies are doing, where they're putting the onus on the individual itself. So they will tell you what you're supposed to be doing, whether it's quarantine for 5 days, 8 days, or 14. I'm not sure where the number is at this point. But they tell you like you're supposed to quarantine, and then after that you get your test, and then you can go about. But there is no tracking. There is no like follow up. There's none of that. They're just informing you of what you're supposed to do, which puts I'm guessing puts the liability on the individual and not on the state or the organization,
Okay, but it is an honor system.
pretty much. And we see LA cases topped, I think it was like 40,000, which is almost half of LA County. So it isn't working, I'll tell you that.
All right. So, Moy, did you want to tell us about your turn up plan since we're, you know, lockdown is lifted up here? Or you ain't going nowhere. So we are going to get into housekeeping, and
That's
I'll turn it over to you for that.
all right. So we're gonna turn it up on the show intros, the show outros, the voiceovers, script copy, 15 and 30-second promos. 2-day business day turnaround. Send an email to ADOS CA Media Group. That's ADOS CA Media Group at gmail.com for more
All
info.
right.
But yeah, no, I'm not gonna turn it up, fam. This ain't 1999. You know what I mean? Like, nah, we ain't gonna do that. It's all good for some
Yeah.
people. I mean, hey, you never know. I mean, I heard, out in Northern California at Eddie Murphy's old spot where he used to live, like I heard on the news, like somebody out there, like there was more than like the 100 people out there, like partying, like during the New Year's,
Mm,
New Year's or something like that. They was throwing down out there, man. I mean, who knows? I don't know. I
yeah,
wouldn't.
those.
Know.
Sorry,
Mm.
go ahead.
So
Those
I just,
parties are popping up all over the state. I know in LA there's a lot of like hidden raves or like partying in alleyways and such that are going on. But this is why these cases are popping up. Like people can't stay away.
Can't
Yep.
stay away. Can't stay away. Okay, so let's get into it. I'll pull up our first topic of discussion. As most people know by now, or if you don't, Oprah has sold controlling interest of her company, OWN. OWN. I always thought that that was a flex, Oprah Winfrey Show. I got my own stuff. She was flexing with that, but doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Let's see what's going on. Oprah Winfrey sells most of her own stake to Discovery for 36 million. Oprah Winfrey sold most of her stake in OWN Channel, so its majority owner Discovery Inc. for more than 36 million in stock. Okay. It doesn't really say why she did this. Does anybody have any ideas why Oprah, media mogul, billionaire, would would give up controlling interest in her media operation?
I don't know. You want to go, CO, and then I'll follow up after you.
Um, I haven't read anything specifically from her to say this is exactly why I'm doing it, or anything that felt like real or truthful. Let me put it that way. But as looking at it as someone who owns a business, the only reason anyone would sell is because it is there will make more money off of the sell, or they need that cash influx to go do something else. Um, but the thing that leaves me with this is always that our what we start, and we as ADOS, we as Black folks in America, what we start, what we create, always seems to be worth more money when it's controlled by someone who's not us, essentially. And that's what I'm left with again. Like Oprah was great when she had her. I won't say great, but she was doing well financially when she had her own show. She ventured off to go start this network. Everybody had high hopes, and then it kind of just plateaued. Um, so I'm curious to see what Discovery is going to do now that they own, you know. And Discovery, I'm trying to remember who owns Discovery because they were sold in the past like 4 to 6 years. So they're not even independent. They're owned by a different network. So I'm very curious to see where this goes and what new types of shows they're going to throw up there.
Did you watch the OWN network at all?
Not at all, and that's
Oh,
partially because I don't have cable. Um, like I haven't had cable really since I left my mother's house. Like I'm a millennial, so I've been streaming for forever. So I don't have cable, and outside of that, the shows that were placed on that network weren't necessarily shows that I was interested in. So it wasn't like I sought them out in other ways, like try downloading them or streaming them elsewhere. So it most of their shows just didn't appeal to me.
okay.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I know Tyler Perry eventually had some of his shows on that network on OWN, which really helped Oprah because her ratings were tanking. I
Mm.
mean, even out the gate, they were tanking, and I think part of that, just in my opinion, unfortunately, she wasn't focused. I think on like the black community. She was kind of just trying to put it out there on a broad level, on a broad scope. And I mean, sometimes when you do that, when you're just trying to go broad, and this goes for anything, you're not trying to focus on, your niche, you miss the target. And unfortunately, out the gate, she just missed it. I know when she was first trying to launch OWN, she had like this huge contest where she wanted people to submit their ideas to her own network. I mean, I didn't submit any ideas because I have
I
some
don't.
horror stories of my stuff getting jacked. But that's a whole nother topic of ADOS, man, right? But I know there was a lot of people who were like submitting ideas. Now, I highly doubt anybody actually got ideas accepted into her, Oprah owned network. And I'm sure there was some really good ideas, for some black people. But even when her own network first launched, it was bad, and look, she's a mogul, and I think there was a high expectation for her to succeed. And I think most people, even black people, uh, and white people, really wanted her to succeed. We don't like to see our people not be successful. We want to support you. But at the same time, if your program, as CEO was saying, is, if people aren't feeling it, they're just not feeling it. I mean, especially if you're not trying to target a certain demographic. And unfortunately, and we can get into a little bit later, Oprah hasn't had the best track record when it comes to, specifically, dealing with, black issues. She may have in the beginning. I think she did when she had her own, show on like whatever network she first started on. But after a while, I guess she became so big, her message, got vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my next question. I mean, is this even a loss for the ADOS community? Is it a huge loss? Doesn't sound like either of you are watching it. I wasn't watching it. Is this a loss for ADOS?
Yeah, I'd be interested, people, in the comments, to see what they think, to see if this is a loss. I mean, we've lost, a lot of our big businesses, and you know, I don't know if it's a loss or not. I don't have that answer.
We
Uh,
have a comment here. It was always vanilla.
and no pun intended. Um,
Unintended.
yeah.
All
What,
right.
Theo? What do you think? Do you think it was a loss
Um,
for you know?
I think like Queen Sugar, was Greenleaf on there. I'm gonna just mess up her name, but Ilana Fix My Life. Like those were the shows that I heard about, that I've seen several episodes and supported, but wasn't enough to like capture me to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. So I think for those shows, and just for the bare minimum, the amount of black folks who had jobs because of that, which may or may not carry over now that Discover owns it, 95% of it. That in itself is a loss. But as far as being, I didn't view Own Network as like a thought leader, a content leader, as something that was pushing our agenda, as something that was like like budding newness, or new, whether it was from the creative aspect or like storytelling or anything. That isn't what I would associate with Own, even though there were a handful of shows on her network that were interesting. So I would say the greatest loss is just the if there is a decrease in the loss of jobs for our people.
Mm,
Okay.
good
Fair
point.
enough. All right. So she didn't have a lot of conscious media. So what I will do here is play a short clip. It's about 5 minutes, just a little short clip of from the movie Cosmic Slop. I don't know if you're familiar with it. We did do a watch and sip on New Year's on this one. Just conscious media. When I saw it recently, Moria shared it with me. It really stuck in my mind. So um, let's give it a watch and see what you think. Do we need more of this type of media production?
Beware of strangers bearing gifts. There may be strings attached. And what might be strange for some may be a news for others. Let me show you what I mean. Check it.
Bernie, some of these people have been out here since 2 o'clock this morning, though the aliens aren't scheduled to arrive before noon. But as you can see, the crowd is getting pretty excited as America prepares for its first encounter with space since NASA went bankrupt back in 1998. It's quite a circus.
Thank you, Stryker. Of course, we will go back to Plymouth Rock the moment the aliens are sighted. In other news, the The Environmental Protection Agency has added Hartford, Connecticut to its list of cities to be evacuated by year's end. Carcinogen levels there have topped those found in Baltimore last year. The gap between black salaries and white widened. Wait, something's now happening at Plymouth Rock. Stryker.
Well, as you can hear, Bernie, there's definitely something going on now. We can't see anything yet, but this humming is definitely growing louder. You know, ever since the alien signal was first received some 3 months ago, speculation has run rampant as to their appearance, the size and shape of their craft. Oh my God! Literally, a flotilla of spacecraft have just materialized from nowhere right over our heads. This is absolutely amazing. And this is literally an unbelievable sight. You know, as I look to my left, I see Vice President D'Amato and Secretary of State Buchanan approaching the microphone. For those of you who are concerned, President Taylor, of course, is safe and secure in an undisclosed bunker until it's determined whether or not the aliens pose any threat.
Hello? Hello? Is this on? Can you understand me? I'm the Vice President.
We are space traders bearing exquisite gifts that will restore your nation to its former glory. Nearly limitless quantities of gold and precious metals that will instantly erase your deficit. Machines that will renew your rivers and your air. Cold fusion technology for a safe, cheap, and inexhaustible source of energy. All we ask in return is the delivery to our vessels 5 days from now. Every child, woman, and man in your nation with at least 2,500 milligrams of melanin in their skin per square centimeter.
What the hell is melanin?
Put more simply, in trade for solving all your most pressing domestic catastrophes, we are asking for every person in your country that you would classify as black.
Are you kidding?
No, we are not.
What are you going to do with them?
Well, that does not concern you. We give you 5 days to decide, and the offer is non-negotiable. We will not try to coerce you in any way. Yet, I hope we can do some business together.
Wow.
Well,
I have to laugh every time he's like, "What the hell is melanin?
What is melanin?
What's melanin?"
Classify as black though. Like he was like, "What? Me classify as black? I don't know about that." Conscious.
conscious gives us something to think about. And you know, it's not that we don't have conscious media nowadays. A question came up about the fact, though, does our conscious media have to be grounded in some kind of fantasy or some kind of, you know, sci-fi like this with the aliens taking the black people away? And what comes to mind is Lovecraft Country. That's what I was talking to a friend about, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, it's touches on, you know, racism and these things, but it's done in a fantasy type of, you know, does that make sense to you? That yeah. What do you
Yeah,
guys
it's
think?
sci-fi. I feel like there are lots of authors and content creators who use all of the genres, whether it's a musical, whether it's like a stage play, like with George C. Wolfe, or it's film in terms of like comedy or sci-fi or such. But your content creators, or even we permeate everywhere. It's just a matter of if you can get access to a distributor, right? So you can get whatever you're creating in front of folks. And I would say, like, to your point about Lovecraft, I've watched the series. I have not read the books, or the book. I'm not sure. I believe it's one book. So I can only speak to the film. I can't speak to the book itself. But the series, not the film. It does touch on some of those subjects of racism, and it does it in a way that is digestible, and is entertaining. But I expect that of all my media, right? Like, so you can do it with sci-fi, or you can do it with comedy. You can do it as a straight play and have everybody crying. um there are multiple ways to go about it. But sci-fi, I'm a personal fan of sci-fi, so I'm here for it. Like, tell me that story. Like, give me those Octavia Butler stories. Give me stuff. What's his name? The dude who just redid Twilight Zone, and
Oh, Jordan.
yeah, Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
Like, I want those stories because those are also spaces that we have previously been locked out of, and don't have like space in. So I'm happy to see it there. I want to see more of it. Does that answer your question?
It does. So it really depends on the distribution. There's stuff being created, but we just might not always see it because it depends on the distribution channels that it makes it on. For instance, like I said, I never saw that Cosmic Slot before. It's been around since 1994. Looks
Hmm.
like the Headland brothers were responsible for creation, or at least I
Peace out to
saw
Reginald
what
Hudlin.
was yeah, was the director on that. But they were most famous for, maybe you guys can tell me or the audience, what was their most famous movie? The Hudlin brothers.
That I do not know. I'd have to do a quick Google search.
Anyone? 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 Oh, we have a comment here. That's funny. Kind of PSDTD for me. Reagan was the first president I had to live with as an adult. I don't generally watch that kind of stuff ever. Okay, I just didn't watch it because I was unaware of it. But the Hudlin brothers' most famous movie was, uh, now I was thinking I had that up there.
Yeah, I don't think it was Boys in the Hood.
No, it was House Party. House Party was the one
Really
that
That was
propelled
one of the
them
first?
to,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
interesting.
and that made 27 million at the box office, and back then that was a pretty big deal. So it
That's
depends
good.
on, like you said, are these productions bringing in money, and if so, then they'll get wider distribution deals.
Yeah, if I could touch on Lovecraft Country just real quick, I think kind of the only thing that they really honed in on that was kind of more reality based was Tulsa. They did do a flashback scene with Tulsa. They integrated
Hmm.
that in terms of something that happened historically. But I think overall it was well done. you know. But yeah, to go to to CL what she was mentioning, I mean, just in terms of distribution, that's big, and I think we have a couple of slides coming up that actually talk maybe not directly to distribution, or maybe I think Byron Allen, I think he might have his own distribution platform, but even with him, I think he goes through other distributors. So we'll talk about that. But even when you're talking about all just on the pure distribution level, we as Black people, we don't even have our own distribution. We don't have our own cable services. We don't own any of the cable networks. We don't put any cable into the ground. None of that we're not a part of, or I mean, we don't own it. I mean, let me clarify. We might be part of it in terms of building it, but in terms of like ownership and being in that space of being part of the distribution model outright, even if it's majority ownership, yeah, I mean, that I'd be hard pressed to find in terms of like media and maybe in general, the distribution model when it comes to, America.
Well, let's take a
Yeah.
look at these are the top 15 talent agencies who are agents who run Hollywood. So um, I really don't see any skin folk in this picture here. So that kind of goes directly to what you were saying, is that we are just not in those spaces making those distribution decisions.
I'm sorry, Sia, you were gonna say something?
Oh, that it had to do with black distribution companies. There are a few out there, but to your point, like the amount of power that they yield and access and reach that they have does not compare.
All right.
All right. And on the other side of the lens here, what do we have? 2020 Hollywood Diversity Report, a different story behind the scene. Film roles were more plentiful for women and people of color in 2018 and 2019, but underrepresentation remains for writers and execs, which we just saw up the slide of the 15 top Hollywood agents. The 2020 Hollywood Diversity Report also includes a workplace analysis of 11 major and mid major studios, which found that 91% of C level positions are held by white people and 82 are held by men. Among all senior executive positions, 93% are held by white people and 80% by men. Further down the org chart, gender equality is somewhat better. Studios, films, units, heads are 86% white, but only 69% male. What's being greenlit matters, said the report's co author, Anna Kristen Roman, Director in Research and Civic Engagement for UCLA College Division of Social Sciences. And although the industry is changing in front of the camera, white men are still doing the overwhelming majority of the green lighting and making the major decisions behind the studios. Does that sound accurate?
Indeed, indeed. The importance in these two articles, I want to highlight a couple of things. One is with the talent agents. Talent agents are a very powerful part of the industry because they are the ones who will even be able to get you seen for a role, right? We know that the scripts and everything that get thrown up has been um, as scripts and everything comes up, even if it says, hey, woman, approximately 36, weathered, approximately 5'6", it's the talent agencies or the talent folks who will be like, okay, we're only going to send this stack of resumes or these headshots, and they are choosing which people even have the option to go in and to try out for these parts. And in that cases, as well as when you have the heads of these studios and organizations who are still doing the green lighting mean choosing which scripts will be made into films or choosing which books will be turned into films or turned into film scripts to later be turned into films. They are the ones who are choosing the content on one hand, and they are also the ones who are choosing the people who are going to fulfill that content. So even though women absolutely and black folks, this is ADOS, so we're not going to talk about POC rather, like ADOS folks, even though we're fighting our way into the spaces, we're still not in those positions to make major choices. And so when we sit in those meetings when we're on those email chains and we do speak up and we do say, there's still layers and layers of powerful white men and more white women who are continuing their business as usual. So our numbers are increasing, but we still don't have the power yet. And to previous, we also don't have our own organizations in order to continue to do the work ourselves. So we're constantly in that position when we're trying to play the game, but still can't get ahead because of those who are still reigning in power.
As an insider, as an industry insider, do you hear talk of that changing, or are they trying to make changes? Does it just sound like lip service, or is there any real work being done to uh, close the executive job gap?
I would say it depends on the organization. Previous to 2020, I would say diversity and inclusion, like it was a big thing for like the past 10 years. And as we see on many levels, diversity and inclusion usually ends up being women, right? And we still get edged out. So now post 2020, when I've seen almost every studio, organization, whatever, put out a statement about how, yes, we support BLM, we support Black lives, we're here, we're going to do more, we're going to be better. I've seen a lot of lip service, and myself and many other people are pushing the organizations that they are a part of, as well as that they are familiar with them making sure that it's not just lip service. But
Holding
it's
them
still,
accountable.
yeah, holding them accountable, but it still takes folks who are in the know and who are educated and have the ability to execute something different in those slots. But again, if they are the same folks, unless these individuals are really doing their due diligence, which we haven't seen historically, a lot of it will be more of the same. I'm sure it will be a majority of the organizations who will be able to turn this.
Okay, well, the slide that we saw, it did say that uh, there's more diversity in front of the camera, or they're working towards that end, even though executives, they still need to work on that. Um, but even with these more black actors in front of the camera, it looks like here they might not be getting the prominent roles. Let's take a look at uh, Netflix blackfishing scheme. Why Netflix features black actors in promos to black users. The streaming firm says it does not track users' race or ethnicity, but in customizing promotions based on users' past viewing history, it can achieve a similar effect. Last week, Netflix users raised concerns that the company was targeting African American users by race. In a way, it promoted films highlighting black characters who sometimes had only minor roles in the movie. The, be- the debate began after Stacia L. Brown, creator of the podcast Charm City, tweeted a screenshot of the promotion she was shown for Like Father, featuring two black characters, Leonard Otts and Blair Brooks, who had 20 lines between them tops, rather than the movie's famous white stars, Christian Bale and Kelsey Grammer. Brown, who is black, posted a handful of other examples where Netflix highlighted black actors, presumably to entice her to watch, even though the film's cast were predominantly white. Are we seeing that become more of a trend?
I can say that I've experienced that firsthand with Netflix. They've got me a couple of times where I'm like, "Oh, hey, cute little love story with some black folks. Yeah, let's do it." Fishing, exactly. And then I watch it, and there's a black character and maybe a third of the film. Excuse me. And there's still the typical tropes where they are there to give the white character all of the information that they need to help that individual get to their point, but they are not a three-dimensional character. They don't have their own storyline, and they're really just there to help out the main characters. So I will say it's quite frustrating. I've definitely had this happen with Netflix, absolutely. And I haven't, maybe I'm just on Netflix more, but I haven't had this experience with Hulu, or I'm curious about other streaming services. But their algorithm for sure, like if anybody just puts on Black Nativity or anything that has black folks in it, all of a sudden it completely changes your algorithm, and the image, not just your algorithm, but the images for which you see, to as Umoja just said, to fish people in so that they can get those views. And then you know the consumer is left feeling a tad bit duped at the end.
Yeah, and speaking of being a placeholder for white uplift and you know um, white happiness, have you seen the movie Soul?
Not yet. I've
Oh,
heard a lot of stuff about it, but no, I haven't.
okay, then I won't spoil it for you all. I'm gonna let y'all get in there and watch it so you can form your own opinions. But yeah, it was really really bad narrative.
Speak on it.
And this is what they're pushing to our children, so we really need to be aware aware of that. All right. So let's see. Netflix. Netflix is a hot topic. They're a big media mogul. What do we think about what's going on with Netflix and how they were, so accommodating in taking Dave Chappelle's show off the air at his request because he felt that he wasn't compensated, fairly for producing the content in the first place and also wasn't receiving any residuals for um, the show, streaming nowadays. Um, that's kind of a new subject because streaming wasn't around when his shows were produced, but it's around now. So, should you be eligible to receive additional funding if some kind of a new platform comes up that breathes new life into your content that's been previously created?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll if you want to chime in on this as well, CO. That really actually comes down to contracts. And at one point before the digital world, in pre-millennial times, we had physical, products that were out there. So most of the contracts across the board in media were, dealing with either DVDs, CDs, even cassette tapes. And I think they even might be producing still vinyl, so most of those
Mm.
contracts were dealing with that. And so some of the contracts may have been grandfathered into it, but as a general blanket, distribution. And that'd be, I guess, to each creator or creative person who was involved in the agreement to go back and renegotiate with a company. But that specifically has, more so to do with, I mean, from my understanding, dealing with contracts. So if Dave Chappelle is having an issue, and he has some stake into some of the content that is previously put up, that he was involved with, yeah, maybe he does have, a point, to get in there and maybe getting some different residuals via digital. But yeah, a lot of companies are even, trying to, even to this day, trying to navigate, because it took a while for the music industry to get on board, specifically. I mean, it was a lot of dinosaur, pushback, to try to get their
Mhm.
content on the digital. They were just so much against it. And so finally they were just like, okay, we got to give in because, I think it was, what's the one with the symbol with the cat? I can't remember what it's called. Anyway,
I want to say Napstar,
yeah,
but
Napster. There you go. Thank you. So it was
okay.
Napster. There you go, Kim. Yeah. So when Napster came about, they were very hesitant about trying to, get involved with, companies like Napster, but they, the music industry ended up getting uh, basically in bed doing deals with, companies like Napster, and, it blew up iTunes, etc. So that came into fruition. And then now, especially with COVID, I mean,
Mhm.
the TV and film industry, they were just really slow, getting to the digital format. But it's interesting now that, uh, with the pandemic out, that even, companies, I think I heard maybe Warner Brothers are like just going straight to streaming, on their
Mhm.
service, and just even bypassing, theaters and some, companies, and well, I shouldn't say companies, but more so like creatives, like some of the directors. Um, I think was it? I don't think it was James Cameron. It was this other person who's famous for doing Star Trek, and uh, I can't remember his name now, but he was
J.J. Abrams.
J.J. Abrams. Thanks. Yeah, he was really really not a fan of these companies just going straight to streaming and not even trying to hit theaters first.
Yeah, well, in COVID times, I mean, that kind of is where what has to happen. But I felt the same way about movies being up for Oscars that hadn't had a theater run. I thought that I didn't like that.
New traditions. Um,
New traditions, making
I
new
would I would
traditions.
say um I would say a couple of things. One, I think the streaming part. If folks remember the writer strike of what was it, 2007 or 2008, I think that was a prime opportunity, or I should say, money that was left on the table when they were negotiating as to like the whole digital era, like the writer or I wasn't in those meetings. I wasn't a part of it, but the end result was like there wasn't carved out space to handle the digital. And by 2007, 2008, it was at least to me it was clear where we were headed. Um so to the initial question about Dave Chappelle, I think the the union kind of shot a lot of them in the foot from the jump, and they've been trying to pick up ever since, because they were trying to, like, I don't know if they were trying to hold on to old ways in the same way that you just explained in the music industry they were. But it's clearly money left on the table. So for Dave Chappelle, he created a piece of content, sold that content, but it was definitely sold under the intention of being ABC. And now the people who own the rights to distribute it are now turning that into XYZ. I do think that Dave Chappelle has an argument because it's not like they're just replaying his old stuff, right? What they did was they chopped it up, brought into like tertiary actors to the Dave Chappelle show, to do snippets in between some of the sections that have been chopped up. So they've literally taken something that was a whole and created a collage with it and are now selling that collage as if they own the entirety of it. So from a creative spot, I think he has a great argument and it's a great opportunity to push back. But to your point, Umoja, like it's about the rights, and the company does have the rights to his likeness to that content. So I'm positive that Dave Chappelle moving forward, he's going to make sure that that's in his contract. He's going to make sure that they're good. So I'm not really necessarily worried about the Dave Chappelles, but I'm worried about the Tyrones and the folks who are coming up behind, who are new or still trying to break in. I'm curious about what the union is going to do to protect these writers, these directors, these content creators. Again, it's also a different world where at Dave Chappelle's time, like back in 2007, back in 2000, like you needed, the major studios to get your content out. At this point, you just need the internet and your iPhone, or your Android. So it's you can get it out, but if you want to get that big studio money, then yeah, you still have to go through a distributor like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or something like that. So I think it's a telltale lesson to the content creators out there who are interested in dealing with these folks on the type of stuff that you need to include in your contracts.
All right, so get the contract up, get it right the first time. So Netflix was accommodating with Chappelle. Like I said, that was very noble of them. But at the same time, we've got Monique over here. Monique's discrimination, lowballing lawsuit against Netflix over pay can go forward, court rules. So, when was this posted? In July of 18. Monique won a major victory against Netflix in her lawsuit alleging race and gender discrimination after a federal court ruled Thursday that she plausibly alleged the streaming giant illegally retaliated when she rejected a lowball offer to do a comedy special. The decision in the Central District Court in California means Monique Hicks, her real name, lawsuit can go forward, and Netflix attempt to get it dismissed was denied. All right. So is it a gender issue rather than a racial issue that they'd be so accommodating with Dave Chappelle? But it looks like they're putting Monique through the ringer.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean, that's a good question. I think for Monique, it's really both. It's race and gender.
Yeah,
Yeah.
black
I
women.
the
mean,
intersectionality. Hmm.
I know some people may talk about the example with Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock, um, which that may be a gender, you know, anomaly that's happening. But I mean, for the most part, with her, it's definitely both, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd say the same. Especially given what they were offering, like the Amy Schumer, to do a similar set type, similar product, right? Stand up comedy, for a given length of time, to very well known at the time, very well known. Well, I shouldn't say at the time, but two very well known comedians. So I don't doubt that it is only like race. I do believe it's also gender, because I don't believe Amy Schumer was making what Chappelle is making. So for for Monique, it's that intersectionality. It's both. You can't necessarily pull one out and say it's only the other. I do agree that it could be connected, and obviously the courts do as I can't say the courts do as well, but they believe that she has a strong enough case in order to proceed forward.
All right, all right. So we need more black distributors to help get our content out. We know that there aren't that many out there, but we've got Byron Allen here. Another lawsuit. It seems like Ado's always getting into lawsuits with these media companies. Byron Allen settles with Comcast after losing Supreme Court battle. And what we're looking at here is his freestyle team. And it looks like he's the only black person on it.
Peace out to Byron Allen.
Yeah, this is goes back to what we were talking about the folks who are in the positions to make major decisions. You know, um, I do think that Byron Island, lives and exists in a world that's far removed from the typical ADOS experience. So the people who he is surrounded with, I'm sure the people who he went to school with, the people who he's chummy chum with, his wife, like they aren't us because he is existing in spaces that we do not frequent. You know, so I am actually not surprised to see his board look like this. I am upset because while ADOS was backing his case, um he was talking all that jazz about us and representation and everything, and he is was correct in saying all of those things. So I'm not mad at what he was saying. I'm just upset at the lack of follow through. And I'm very, very curious to see who else, where are those people of color, specifically the ADOS? Are we the assistants at his and within his organization? Where are we?
It's a good question. Let's take a look at the Supreme Court Comcast ruling case. Take a look at it. The recent Comcast racial discrimination decision by Supreme Court is a major setback for civil rights. Writes Craig Baines, director of legal strategies at Demos. The unanimous outcome in favor of Comcast demonstrates how dramatically the law has turned away from protecting civil rights in recent years. The U.S. Supreme Court's March 23 decision in Comcast versus National Association of African American Owned Media raises the bar for workers and consumers who sue companies over racial discrimination. The ruling is the product of a quiet revolution in anti discrimination law. The court's decision The nine justice ruled unanimously for Comcast, concluding that plaintiffs must meet the higher but for standard, writing for the court. Justice Neal deemed but for causation the default rule for federal legislation and read the 1866 text as suggestive of a but for requirement. Gorsuch dismissed the motivating factor test as a modern judicial invention that had no application to the 1866 Act. The decision is a major setback for civil rights. The but for standard is more demanding, harder to prove, and more tolerant of racial bias than the motivating factor test. So, by doing this lawsuit and opening it up for Comcast to um, make this change to the Civil Rights Act, it really did us more harm than good. And what disturbed me about it is because again, um, April 6, 2020 is when we were talking about this. That is right when we were right in the full swing of, the COVID lockdown. So they pushed this through quietly while everybody was majorly distracted. And, you know, we don't know what's ahead for these discrimination lawsuits that'll be
Yeah.
coming out in the future.
I guess another question that I think I have is what do we have that slide, Kim, about what but for is? Because I know that
Yeah.
that term but for was always thrown out there.
You want to take that one, Yamoya?
I guess I will. But for legal definition of but for of or relating to the necessary cause as a negligent act without which a particular result as damage would not have occurred, a but for test of causation. And that was according to the Webster Dictionary. So, I mean, just based on that, I guess the judge was like, yeah, whatever, you know, you're coming with has to have a higher standard because the causation in this particular case with Byron Allen, unfortunately, didn't meet that standard, which is crazy because I don't, like he won in the Ninth Circuit Court or something like that on the court below, but all of a sudden goes to the Supreme Court, and they find it different. Like it's just odd to me, how that works.
That's the importance of stacking, of the importance of the judges. And we know for several decades now, the Republicans have been stacking the courts. So when these key like legislation comes up from the state all the way up to the federal level, these are the different ways in which we are impacted, and these are the different ways that the ADOS community is set back. So the huge thing with the but for versus what was the other one? I just had a brain fart. It was but for, and prior to that it was what?
I think was it on the slide?
Yeah, it's on the slide.
All right, let's go
I'm
back
having a
to the
brain fart.
slide.
The other one. Um. Well, all right. Let me just talk about but for because my brain
Okay.
is. Um. The but for is like, let's say I work for Warner Brothers or Paramount or any major studio, and I feel like I have been passed up for a job, or in Byron Island's case, he was saying he was trying to buy a bunch of networks so that his company could be the distributors, right? They could use those networks to distribute content. And he was passed up. He was completely passed over, and not given the opportunity to do so. So when this court case passed, basically what it said was like, we can no longer sue and say, well, race went from being like a
The
mitigating factor,
determining factor.
the determining factor, to but for. So if it wasn't for the fact that I was black, but for the fact that I am African American, that I am ADOS, I would have had that job. versus it was one of the mitigating factors. Like it was part of it, but not the sole reason or a specific reason. So with the passing of this new, I don't this new, how do you call it? My brain is slowly
Legislation or
dying.
law or whatever.
Yeah. Um, it is now harder to go up against these large organizations and say, hey, due to my race, like they are discriminating against me due to racism. It is much harder to prove a but for than it is a mitigating factor.
Yep.
Wow.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Not like we need any more barriers.
All right,
But
family. We're coming up on 2 minutes. So
all
should we
right, well, let's
roll
burn through
through?
this here. This one is on you, Yamoya. We're going to talk a little bit about the Lincoln Motion Picture Company. How many of our viewing audience even knew that the Lincoln Motion Picture Company existed?
Boom. Yeah, like I had no idea about the Lincoln Motion Picture Company. Never got taught about this. And I'm colleged, went to college, never had a clue about this. Didn't come up in the African American history books, anything. So yeah, when eventually I came across this, I was just like, as I got older, I was like, hey, this is something that I think, the family definitely should know. So let's read a little bit about the Lincoln Motion Picture Company. The Lincoln Motion Picture Company was an American film production company founded in 1916 by Noble Johnson and George Johnson. Noble Johnson was president of the company. The secretary was actor Clarence A. Brooks. Dr. James T. Smith was treasurer, and Dudley A. Brooks was assistant secretary. The company is known as the first producer of quote-unquote race movies. Established in Omaha, Nebraska, the company relocated to Los Angeles the following year. It remained in operation until 1923. That's interesting because, I think Tulsa was around 1921. Closing shortly after announcing a final project, The Heart of a Negro. And so out of the Lincoln Motion Picture Company came one of the greats, and probably the first, at least established and well-known, and I believe he was ADOS, black filmmaker known as Oscar Micheaux. Some say Micheaux, depending on who you ask. The brother was born in 1884, and he was an author, director, and independent producer of more than 44 films. And if you have a chance, fam, you can go on and do your online research and see some of his short films that he did. I think The Homesteader, I don't know. I think it like got destroyed or something like that. But yeah, so unfortunately, I heard that was supposed to be a really good movie. I could be wrong, but I don't think it does exist. So here, let me go back here for a second, and I do want to show everybody a book that they can pick up. I don't know if any people can read that. If y'all can see this, well, this book is called "The Life of America's First Black Filmmaker, Oscar Micheaux, the Great and Only." It's written by Patrick McGulligan. It's go look online or go to your black. I think I got this at a black bookstore down in Los Angeles some number of years ago. I think it's called Essawan. Peace out to Essawan bookstore,
Mhm.
Park. I picked that
Yes.
up. I saw it and I was like, I got to get it. So yeah, so definitely check out some of Oscar Micheaux's content. And I
Yeah.
definitely wanted to mention that because that's a question that we have to ask ourselves, like what happened to these entities that we created in the 20s, and they don't exist anymore. Not only do they not exist anymore, like we don't even know about them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like the question is, whose fault is that?
Yeah,
The victor writes the history books, you know.
sure, true.
And he was a DOS. He was Born in Illinois, and his father was a slave in Kentucky.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
there you go.
I'm definitely going to be looking into watching some of his short films and movies and grabbing that book there that Moya has. That's very important historical information. All right, and on to our next topic, which has been a big buzz this week with everything going on with outgoing President Donald Trump, maybe going out even sooner than he thinks. But censorship in the media and what we think about that. Before we get into it, I want to play a little video here um, of what President Donald Trump had to say about Section 230 in the Decency Act. It actually looks like, he signed an executive order to amend Section 230. So maybe his censorship is retaliation. His Twitter censorship is retaliation. Um,
They've had unchecked power to censor, restrict, edit, shape, hide, alter virtually any form of communication between private citizens or large public audiences. There's no precedent in American history for so small a number of corporations to control so large a sphere of human interaction. The choices that Twitter makes when it chooses to suppress, edit, blacklist, shadow, ban are editorial decisions, pure and simple. They're editorial decisions. In those moments, Twitter ceases to be a neutral public platform and they become an editor with a viewpoint. And I think we can say that about others also, whether you're looking at Google, whether you're looking at Facebook, and perhaps others. One egregious example is when they try to silence views that they disagree with by selectively applying a fact check. What they choose to fact check and what they choose to ignore or even promote is nothing more than a political activism group. The censorship and bias is a threat to freedom itself. Imagine if your phone company silenced or edited your conversation. Social media companies have vastly more power and more reach than any phone company in the United States, more reach actually than your newspapers by far. Therefore, today I'm signing an executive order to protect and uphold the free speech and rights of the American people. Currently, social media giants like Twitter receive an unprecedented liability shield based on the theory that they're a neutral platform, which they are not. My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to make it that social media companies that engage in censoring or any political conduct will not be able to keep their liability shield. Finally, I'm directing my administration to develop policies and procedures to ensure taxpayer dollars are not going in any social media company that repress free speech. The government spends billions of dollars on giving them money. They're rich enough, so we're going to be doing none of it or very little of it.
Right. So if we believe that last line, what he said about the government giving these companies billions of dollars, can they still say, hey, we're a private company, we do what we want, even though they're, benefiting from government protections and government funding? I mean, where does the line cross there? And before we get into the conversation, I'm just going to read some information about Section 230. Got this from an article titled "Mend It, Don't End It." The First Amendment provides a path to peace for social media. The first provision, 230, declared that internet companies who host user generated content would be treated as distributors and not publishers. This is important because they could not then be sued over content found on their platforms. To translate the distinction to the real world context, a magazine is a publisher, whereas the newsstand on which the magazine is sold is a distributor. If a magazine contains content that is obscene or defamatory, the publisher and not the newsstand faces liability. Newsstands that present a wide variety of content options wouldn't last long without this protection, and likely neither would UGC sites. In addition to user content on Twitter and Facebook, Section 230 has enabled video uploads to YouTube, blogging platforms like Medium, comments posted on Reddit, and boards all over the internet, and customer reviews on Yelp and Amazon. Even services like Gmail would be imperiled if they became liable for any email sent over the server. So, seems like the argument is that these social media platforms are acting like distributor as well as publisher and benefiting from the protections that protect them against liability, but uh, saying we're a private company and we can censor who we want.
Yeah,
It's
that
slippery
kind of gets
slope.
yeah, that kind of gets down to, the whole First Amendment, clause and freedom of speech. And if these um, companies are looked upon as being a part of the public entity and they're censoring people, yeah, I mean, that's infringing on people's constitutional rights. But if they're looked as a private company, then, and they're kind of setting their own rules. And I guess, what was that, 230 protects them in any company, supposedly, because they want to. It also is supposed to protect, the smaller businesses as well who are trying to do startups. Um, that just keeps raising the question. Even, not a huge fan of Trump, but he was making some interesting points, you know, about, infringing on, the First Amendment. So this is definitely going to be a debate and a topic that's definitely needs to be further discussed.
Right? And maybe it starts with Trump. And as we were talking about on last week's pop up, you know, our black media, are we it, the YouTubers, the ones that we listen to on YouTube? What if YouTube, Twitter, and these social media platforms get tired of us screaming about reparations and decide to cut us off?
Good point.
Yeah. Um I am sort of still trying to figure this one out, because I do look at the social media platforms as a distributor and not a publisher, because like I have access, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever it is. I have access to this platform, and I put my own content, whether it's pictures of my food or me just babbling or whatever it is. I put it out there. Those folks, these social media sites, they weed out like what they don't want to create, right? They don't want to create a space where it's just all hate speech, right? They don't want to create a space where it is like detrimental to someone's health or something like that. So then they say, okay, hey, you can't do this. I do think it is extremely flawed. For instance, I had a post taken down on Instagram last week because I posted, someone had posted something like, hey, we don't, regarding the white nationalists who stormed the Capitol, we don't want you to shoot them like y'all shot us. We just don't want y'all to shoot us, meaning black folks. And my response was like, no, shoot them, because I spent all of 2020 getting shot with rubber bullets and tear gas and pepper sprayed up. Like, treat them the way that y'all treat us. And I guarantee if you do that, that those folks will join in on changing how police respond, how folks in places of power respond. But my post got taken down because of the fact that I said no, they should get shot, like in the same way that the LAPD and LA Sheriff's Department shot us. Now, I find it quite interesting that when I'm saying treat them the way that LAPD treats us, that gets taken down, and like a couple of other stuff. But I have been called all types of stuff on social media, and that stuff makes it through. Right.
Mhm.
There's also a thing called shadow banning, to your point that you were making about like what happens when folks want to stop hearing about ADOS, right? on TikTok, a lot of people talk about shadow banning, um, in which they alter your algorithm so that the content that you are putting out doesn't get seen by other people. So they're not censoring you, they're not stopping your ability to speak, but they are preventing your content, your words, your experience from getting out there, thus affecting and thus making it to other people. Um, so I certainly have an issue with that. Um, I have an issue with a lot of the algorithms that are currently out there and what needs to be done in order for your content to be seen. But I don't look at these places as publishers because they are not the ones who are creating the content. And at the end of the day, they are a social media platform, right? It is not it is not the only place that I can go and have my freedom of speech, right? This company doesn't guarantee me freedom of speech. My constitution does. And just like any other company, they can refuse me service for whatever the crap reason they feel like it. So if we or anybody, and Trump, to be honest, Trump should have been banned a long time ago. And I'm more so have issues
Well,
with the
I mean, that's my point is they should have banned him when he said the offensive remarks. I mean, I really had a hard time trying to determine what the insightful remarks were, when I was posting about it and people are saying, oh, he's inciting violence. I'm like, well, direct me to it. Send me links, send me videos. Crickets. I mean, he did not directly tell anybody to go out and storm the Capitol. I mean, it was dog whistling at best.
I agree. It was complete dog whistling from his tweet that was like, I'll see you on the 6th, to even his like released message, what do you say? Like, I love you, like all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. Like,
oh yeah. They watched that from the web, and then well, the main comment people kept citing um, was the stand by and stand down and
oh,
stand by. But still, I mean, I could tell y'all stand by,
yeah,
stand down. Ados. I
yeah,
mean,
it's not direct, right? But it does go to show the massive power that these social media companies have, right? Like during I forget I forget what number it was, the when Obama was running for president, and the fact that Zuckerberg was for him and allowed a lot of stuff to happen because he supported Obama. You know, it's great for the people who support Obama, but if you take a step back and you pull him out of it and you just put anybody in there, like, do we really want these companies to have this much power? To be honest, these folks have already, like, look at Rockefeller. Look at the amount of money that he had and the amount of like influence that he was able to have. Look at the Koch brothers, like how they affect newspapers and TV channels and such like that. Like, folks with money in America have the ability to sway, to control information. And the social medias, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, they have that ability. So I think that is what we should be questioning. That is what we should be going after them for. Having way too much power, having way too much control. They are certainly monopolies. I will say that. But as far as being a publisher, I feel like that is an argument that if it was taken to the courts, we might not win that one.
okay, fair
My 2 cents,
enough.
though.
And I know, and I was going to ask you how you felt about being censored because I knew. I mean, I get censored. I've been to Twitter jail, so I know
Twitter
you
jail.
been to Twitter jail and censored. How do you feel about it? You just feel that's their right as a private company. But I mean, they're a private company, but we all know that the government has their tentacles all over these social media platforms. And like I said, if we're to believe what Trump said, getting billions of dollars, protections. So, I mean, it's just at what point can you not have it both ways?
I do
Yeah.
not have the answer to that question. I do not
Okay.
know because um, I don't know. I've had friends get censored for talking about the damage that LAPD and LASD has done to black bodies, but they don't censor all of the black death that you see, you know, on all of these social media platforms. So I have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of challenges that I would love to push towards these places. Like, why can I so easily look at a black person being hung or shot to death a million times before I get out of the bed, but I can't, at the same time, I can't speak to the injustices that are being done directly to me by state, and law enforcement. You know,
Right.
it's disproportionately or not evenly censored.
And I'm no big fan of, the conservative agenda or anything like that, but when I do go to these platforms, I want to at least feel like I'm getting, unbiased information. I want to feel like I'm getting both sides of the story, or at least it's both there, or at least it's there. A lot of young people, that is where they get their news nowadays, is these social media platforms. So if they're going to these social media platforms with an expectation of getting unbiased news, but in reality, there's only one side that's being shown because of censorship, or shadow boxing, or whatever you're going to call it. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. It might be a whole nother show, and I know it's getting late, and I know you on the East Coast, CEO. I want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah,
Appreciate
salute. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me.
Some really great comments.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, I
appreciate.
mean, this is a topic, one that we need to keep our eye on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, First Amendment, protections, Constitution, how we as AGOS, Black people are going to, uh, you know, get through, not only 2021 but beyond, and how we're going to try to, get these reparations so we can, start competing and creating in these spaces, even from social media to distribution and the like. So, yeah, thanks, and everybody in the chat and everybody else who joined the call. Not the call. One day we're gonna have y'all call in, in the chat. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate you, and all the effort that you put in as well out there.
All right, you guys, stay safe out there. Stay safe and stay sane, and we will see what's coming up. 2021 came out. Just came out,
Oh, just
throwing bows.
yeah. By the way, fam, we're gonna, and hopefully, I think Chris is gonna be back in the building next week. We're gonna do a pre-inauguration show. That's gonna be fire. It's gonna be super fire. So please tune in next week, because we're gonna be back doing our thing, and hopefully y'all gonna go ahead and you know call in.
All right. Well, peace out, family. See you
So
next time.
deuces.